So a few things were created, but primarily there was a migration that we created. That's actually going to insert tweets into the database when we run it so that we can save our tweets in the database. We created a model. Let's actually take a look at these files inside of Sublime Text. Okay, so here's the migration is in database. Created a tweet. So this will create a table of tweets. It'll reference a user, foreign key, true. That just means that it uses the user ID from the user table. And it has text and content. It also will automatically add these timestamps to our tweet. Actually, if you look, almost everything you create will have timestamps attached to it at the end. And what timestamps are, this is a nice Rails feature, that every time you create a new thing, we'll save when it was created and when it was updated last. So those things will automatically get put in there for you, which is actually very useful because you can see, when the last time someone updated a tweet or updated a profile or something like that was. Okay, so we got that. We created a model inside of app models. And this is not the user, the tweet model. It has a line here, belongs to user. So this is actually, in Rails, you have lines inside your models that show how things relate to each other. Now there's nothing inside of our user yet, but we'll end up having to put something in here that basically indicates that a user can have many tweets and that a tweet belongs to a user. And so that's the nature of the relationship. That will actually allow us to go from the tweet to the user and vice versa. If we have them, if we've pulled a tweet out of our database, we can find who is the user that created that tweet, basically. That's what this does. But besides that, this is a very simple object so far. We also created, the tests. We won't worry about that. A new route was added to our route file, which is in config, routes. So there's a line called resources tweets. This line actually sets up a whole bunch of routes for us. It sets up 7, I think. There's always going to be 7. Remember the number 7? It's going to come in. It's going to be pretty important in a second. Created a bunch of views and a controller. So in the controller, there's a bunch of actions here. We have an index action, a show action, a new action, an edit, create, update, destroy. What is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's that magic number again. There are also 2 private functions defined at the bottom. Private is kind of special in Ruby and in Rails. These things basically can't be accessed outside of this file, but everything above it can be accessed outside of the file. The private ones are only to be used inside of this file, basically. And we'll go a little deeper into what's going on here, and we'll actually simplify this a little bit. And lastly, it created a bunch of views for us. So inside of the tweets views, we see there's these HTML files. We also have these JSON files, which we haven't seen before. We have a show, a new, an index, an edit, tweet, underscore form. And then there's a few other things as well. Tweets helper, JBuilder, CoffeeScript, Sass file got created. But let's go ahead and run the Rails server and really just see for ourselves what happened. Actually, we forgot to run the migration. We have a new migration we forgot to run, and it'll actually tell us migrations are pending. To resolve the issue, run Rails, bin Rails db migrate, but we can just run Rails db migrate. So let me just shut that down with Control-C and then run Rails db migrate. That'll run our migration, and it'll add tweets into our database, basically. Okay, so we have them in there. I could also double check inside of db schema. And now we see that my schema, basically this kind of maps out my database and the current status. We now have tweets and we have users. Tweets has a user ID. That's how it's going to know who the user is. Text of the content, and these are the timestamps, created at and updated at. We also have an index on user ID. Indexes are basically just when you're doing a lookup through one of these columns, you put an index on that column because it makes it happen faster. So anytime you are almost always going to be pulling out a tweet based on the user's ID, this index basically just makes that lookup a ton faster. So if you have a lot of things going on, indexes are important, but it's not something you have to worry about for now. So I got this running, and now I'll run the Rails server. And I can go back to my application. So it doesn't look like much changed. I'm already logged in. However, if I go to /tweets, I now have this new view. Now, I don't see much here, but I see tweets, user, content, and I can click new tweet. And basically, there's this form here. Now, it's not very nicely styled, of course. But here, this is where the user's ID would go, and this is where the content of the tweet would go. So if I did, user ID 1, content, this is a tweet, and then create tweet. Now I have a tweet created. What I'm actually looking at is that tweet right now. You see the URL is tweets/1. This is actually the ID of that tweet that was just created. It was the first one. Now I can either click edit to edit it, click show to go back, or go back to the list, and now I have a list of tweets, which is pretty cool. I mean, the Scaffold basically created all of this stuff for us, and what we'll want to do is go in and customize it and actually get it to work the way that we want it to work. But we really need to understand exactly how it's working first.